Welcome to the Partis channel. Today we explain Prophets Kings 1 chapter 12 in a clear and simple way, step by step.
Here's what we're going to cover today. We'll start with a quick hook in some brief context, then look at Rehoboam making his big choice, how the kingdom divides, and Jeroboam building the golden calves. Finally, we'll wrap up with key ideas, explanations, and some incredibly practical lessons.
Section 1. Hook and brief context. To really understand the scene, we just need to look right at the text. King Solomon has just died, and his son, Rehoboam, is the heir. But, he doesn't just automatically get accepted by everyone. Right away in verse 1, we see him going up to Shechem, which is further north, to be crowned. This is huge, because it shows the northern tribes actually have a really powerful voice here. But before they officially crown him, they have a major demand. Led by Jeroboam, who had actually just returned from Egypt, the assembly approaches Rehoboam and says, "Your father put a heavy yoke on us, but now lighten the harsh labor and the heavy yoke he put on us, and we will serve you." Now this heavy yoke they're talking about, it refers to the intense forced labor and massive taxation Solomon used to build the temple, his grand palaces, and all that sprawling infrastructure. The people are just completely exhausted. So, they offer him their absolute loyalty, but with one massive condition: you've got to ease our burden.
Section 2. Rehoboam makes his choice.
So Rehoboam tells the people to come back in 3 days. He's pausing to think it over. But what really matters here is what he actually does with that time. In verses 6 to 11, he seeks out two completely different perspectives. First up, he consults the elders. These are the guys who had served his father Solomon. We're talking about men with years and years of real political experience. And their advice? They tell him, if today you will be a servant to these people and serve them and give them a favorable answer, they will always be your servants. It's brilliant, right? Simple, profound advice. True authority comes from serving the people. But Rehoboam totally rejects this. Instead, he turns to the young men he actually grew up with. And these guys, his peers, they're just filled with arrogance. They urge him to be utterly ruthless. They say, "Tell the people, my little finger is thicker than my father's waist." They're literally advising him to increase the burdens. They tell him to say, "My father scourged you with whips, I will scourge you with scorpions." Now, scorpions here implies these brutal whips fitted with sharp metal barbs. It is just a terrifying escalation of cruelty.
And the text explicitly shows Rehoboam rejecting those wise elders and deciding to repeat the young men's brutal, arrogant words to the people. So, in verses 12 through 14, the third day arrives, Jeroboam and the people come back waiting for the new king's decision, and the text says the king answered the people harshly. He completely, absolutely ignores the wisdom of the elders. Driven entirely by his own ego, he repeats the young men's script word for word. "My father made your yoke heavy, I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips, I will scourge you with scorpions." Honestly, it is a total, catastrophic failure to read the room.
But then, verse 15 notes something absolutely crucial. It says the king's refusal to listen was actually a turn of events orchestrated by God to fulfill an earlier prophecy made to Jeroboam. The text explicitly tells us, "So the king did not listen to the people, for this turn of events was from the Lord, to fulfill the word the Lord had spoken to Jeroboam, son of Nebat, through Adjah the Shilonite." So what does this mean? Even though Rehoboam is clearly acting out of his own free will, right? His own foolish arrogance, the text reveals this deeper layer of divine providence. God is essentially using this very human failure to enact a judgment he had already decreed against the house of Solomon.
Section 3. The kingdom divides.
Let's move into verses 16 through 24 and see how this terrible decision builds into an immediate, irreversible rupture of the entire nation. Hearing Rehoboam's harsh answer, the northern tribes violently reject the house of David with this really famous, definitive battle cry. Verse 16 says, "When all Israel saw that the king refused to listen to them, they answered the king, 'What share do we have in David? What part in Jesse's son? To your tents, O Israel, look after your own house, O David.'" Notice how they phrase that, Jesse's son. It's incredibly dismissive. They aren't treating David like some revered patriarch anymore. To them, he's just a man, and they owe his family absolutely nothing. With those words, the United Kingdom of Israel is officially shattered.
And the immediate fallout? It is chaotic, and it is violent. In verses 17 through 20, Rehoboam makes another just catastrophic miscalculation. He sends out Adoniram to deal with the angry mob. Now, who is Adoniram? He's the exact man who was in charge of the forced labor. Talk about pouring gasoline on a fire. All Israel stones Adoniram to death.
Seeing this happen, King Rehoboam barely manages to jump into his chariot and escape for his life back to Jerusalem. Meanwhile, the northern Israelites officially call Jeroboam to the assembly, and they make him king over all Israel. At this point, only the tribe of Judah, along with Benjamin, remains loyal to Rehoboam and the house of David.
Desperate to regain control, Rehoboam arrives in Jerusalem in verse 21, and he is not ready to let this go. He musters 180,000 fighting men from Judah and Benjamin to make war against the house of Israel. To put that into perspective, that is a massive, massive army gathered to force the northern tribes back into submission. We are quite literally standing on the brink of a huge, bloody, civil war between brothers.
But God steps in. He sends Shemaiah, a man of God, to stop the army. In verses 22 through 24, God speaks to this prophet and tells him to go to Rehoboam and the people of Judah and Benjamin. The command is simple and absolute. Do not go up to fight against your brothers the Israelites. Go home, every one of you, for this is my doing. And you know what? In a rare moment of obedience in this chapter, this massive army actually listens to the word of the Lord and disperses. The civil war is averted, but the reality sets in. The kingdom is permanently cut in two.
Section 4. Jeroboam builds golden calves.
This brings us to verses 25 through 33, where Jeroboam establishes his brand new northern kingdom of Israel. But almost immediately he falls prey to deep paranoia. He is terrified his people will return to Rehoboam if they keep going down to worship in Jerusalem. So Jeroboam takes some very calculated steps out of pure fear. He fortifies cities, he makes golden calves, he appoints non-Levite priests, and he even invents his own festival. In verses 26 and 27, Jeroboam is thinking to himself, if these people go up to offer sacrifices at the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem, they will again give their allegiance to their lord Rehoboam, king of Judah. They will kill me and return to King Rehoboam. The crazy thing here is that God had explicitly promised Jeroboam this kingdom, but Jeroboam, he doesn't trust that promise at all. He is completely ruled by his own insecurity and his fear of losing power. So he decides he has to completely sever those religious ties that bind his people to Jerusalem.
So what does he do? He sets up 2 golden calves. He puts one in Bethel and the other in Dan. Verses 28 through 30 describe this terrible turning point. After seeking advice, which was clearly bad advice, he makes these idols. By placing them at the southern border in Bethel and the northern border in Dan, he's making it geographically convenient for his people. It's like he's saying, hey, it's too much of a hassle to travel all the way to Jerusalem. And then he falsely declares, echoing the exact sin of the Exodus, here are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt. The text is very blunt about this. It tells us plainly, and this thing became a sin.
To finalize this break from Judah, he goes even further. Look at verses 31 through 33. Jeroboam doesn't just stop at the idols. He builds shrines on high places. He appoints priests from all sorts of people, deliberately bypassing the Levites, who are the ones designated as priests by God's law. Then, he institutes a counterfeit festival. He sets it on the 15th day of the 8th month. Now, this is a direct, calculated imitation of the true biblical festival of Sukkot, which actually occurs in the 7th month. The text really emphasizes that this was a month of his own choosing. He even goes up to the altar himself to make the offerings. He has literally rewritten the religion from the ground up just to serve his own political agenda.
Section 5. Key ideas and explanations.
Let's zoom out for a second and distill the simple meaning, or the pashat, of the events we just walked through so we can really grasp the why behind all this history. By reading step by step, we've seen a rapid succession of choices that literally tore a nation apart. We are looking at 2 catastrophic leadership failures here. On one hand, you have Rehoboam, who shatters the kingdom through blind arrogance. He had the kingdom, but his ego and his desperate desire to look tough to his friends cost him 10 of his 12 tribes. On the other hand, you have Jeroboam. He corrupts his new kingdom out of profound fear of losing his grip on power. He was literally handed a kingdom by God, but his lack of faith and paranoid fear that the people would abandon him caused him to invent a totally idolatrous system. Both men acted out of self-preservation and ego rather than wisdom and duty.
And this whole chapter brilliantly illustrates how divine providence works right alongside human action. It's a profound study in how free will and God's ultimate plan coexist. Think about it. Rehoboam freely chose to listen to the terrible advice of his peers. Jeroboam freely chose to build those golden calves. Nobody forced them. Yet the text reminds us back in verse 15 that this turn of events was from the Lord. God didn't force Rehoboam to be cruel, but God used Rehoboam's natural arrogance to bring about the division of the kingdom that he had already prophesied.
Section 6.
practical lessons, and recap.
So what should you take away from this explainer? How can we actually apply the lessons of chapter 12 to our own lives? Because, history isn't just about dates and kings. It's a mirror for human behavior. First, we learn that true influence comes from serving others rather than dominating them. The elder's advice to Rehoboam is completely timeless. If today you will be a servant to these people, they will always be your servants. Second, we absolutely must value the wisdom of experienced elders over the hype of our peers. We see the real danger of the echo chamber here. Rehoboam only listened to the people who told him exactly what his ego wanted to hear. And finally, from Jeroboam, we learn that decisions made out of pure fear almost always lead us astray. When we try to secure our own success through manipulation and panic, we usually end up corrupting the very thing we are trying to protect.
As we recap this tragic division of a once united nation, it challenges us to reflect on how we handle advice, authority, and insecurity in our own daily lives. Whether we're in our families, our workplaces, or our communities, we are so often faced with Rehoboam's choice. Do we lighten the load for others, or do we try to prove our toughness? And we also face Jeroboam's choice. Do we trust the path laid out for us, or do we panic and build our own golden calves just to feel safe? So the next time your leadership is tested, will you be a servant to those around you, or will you build a golden calf to protect your ego?
Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.